There are events, there's programming, there's a lot of things. So anyone listening to this podcast right now, if you are a consumer packaged good, and whether you have been around for 100 years or you're actually starting to conceptualize your own brand, any brand out there can dip their toes in the water.
Hello, I'm John Zimmerman, and welcome to Shelf Confidence, a podcast brought to you by the Pennsylvania Food Merchants Association that focuses on trends and innovations in the food and beverage industry. Today, we're talking about experiential marketing and how brands connect with consumers beyond the store shelf. Joining us today is Ray Sheehan, founder of Old City Media, a company that specializes in live brand activations, community engagement, and experiential marketing. Ray and his team work closely with food and beverage brands and retailers to meet consumers where they are, creating memorable experiences that drive awareness and engagement. Welcome to the show, Ray. How are you doing? Happy New Year.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me on the podcast. Really excited. Looking forward to get into this today. I love talking about brands, love talking about retail and grocery. So super excited for the pod.
Awesome. Funny enough, so do I. So here we go. So cool. We're just going to take this from the top. So Ray, can you start by sharing the origin story of Old City Media and what problems you set out to solve?
We actually started as event producers here in Philadelphia, producing these world-class events. And what I mean by that, the Philadelphia Phillies or the Pittsburgh Pirates, they would go on the road and our agency would come in and take over their ballpark and produce these amazing world-class festivals. They were awesome. A lot of craft beer, a lot of tacos, a lot of food. These were really like fun, lifestyle-driven events. 2020, almost 6 years ago, COVID, yeah. Oh, we all remember. COVID lands on our lap. No large social gatherings, no bringing people together. And we quickly had to pivot. And the brands that we were working with, they also had to pivot. So we took our relationships that we had at retail, at grocery, and we took the relationships that we had with a lot of the brands that we would come to our events, and we essentially became like Match.com. So the solution was we had to still go out and work and, and do things. And the brands that we were working with, they still wanted to go out and promote their brands in a very safe and socially responsible way. And therefore, we created this experiential marketing program that's not only here in Pennsylvania, but also nationwide.
Oh, you had me at tacos and beer. All that sounds great. So, so how do you help retailers and brands create in-store community-based activations that drive the shopper engagement?
Our main goal is how do we create very meaningful connections and interactions for the brands that we work with. And we'll probably get into that in a deeper dive as we go along here. But that's really our main focus of like, how can we really go out and integrate the brand into the fabric of the community? And we want to do that in a very organic way. We want to make sure when we're at retail, we're at grocery, everyone listening on this call right now is a consumer, and we don't want to get away of point of purchase. We don't want to disrupt behavior when we're at a retail or grocery location. So it's done very delicately, but if done correctly, there's a real opportunity for the brand to really cut through the clutter and then have a conversation with their consumer and really start to really understand how does their consumer truly perceive their brand. And you're able to get all these amazing insights when you actually get out into the field. And then from the retailer's perspective and from the grocery perspective, we're showing them there's other ways to monetize your property. And consumers we're all consuming things differently, whether how we consume entertainment with streaming, how we purchase things. So for us, how can we show our retail partners, how can we create the experience at your retail location and enhance the customer experience? Reward your customers. Give your customers another reason why to walk through your front door. So we play it from both angles. We look at it from the lens of the retailer and our grocery partner, and then we also look at it through the lens of our brand partners. And then ultimately, if it works for the customer, it works for everyone.
Cool. So I want to cut through some of the marketing jargon that we're using a little here for the people that are watching. So if you had to explain experiential marketing to a toddler using only snacks, how would you do it?
Yeah. So experiential marketing, the best way to explain it is I'm a brand and I go out and I basically have a brand ambassador. And this is someone who can talk about my brand very intelligently. Doesn't need to get into the nitty and gritty and kind of explain how they make the sausage, but can speak to it high level of like, this is who we are. This is our point of difference. This is why it tastes amazing. This is why it's so fresh. So it's really sending the brand ambassador out to a location. And then the setups can be really sophisticated or they can be very simplistic. And when I say simplistic, think 6-foot table, podium style table. Maybe there's a table skirt there. Maybe there's some information there. Maybe you're sampling some of your products, right? You're actually getting the brand in the hand of the consumer. That's really experiential marketing. You're giving the consumer some sort of an experience while they're there. And the idea is that once they walk away from that experience, they're leaving that activation feeling much more positive about your brand.
No, I think it's an excellent explanation. Thank you for that. For those who not know, So yeah, so talk about brands. I'd love to know more about the pain points that you hear from most of the brands that are looking to build visibility. I'm sure there's stuff that you work through. I'd love to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I would say a lot of brands across the board, and it's talent. I feel like a lot of brands right now, sourcing talent has been somewhat challenging. So I would say I would say a lot of brands would love to get out into the field, would love to have those amazing conversations with a potential end user. Like, who would not want to sign up for that? So I would say one of the challenges is really sourcing staff and talent. And what I've instructed to a lot of these brands, there's a lot of agencies out there that can help you, whether it's us or other agencies out there can help you. So the idea is that you bring in some talent, you get them educated about your brand, super high level. No one wants to hear a 5-page dissertation when they're out doing their errands, but enough where it's top line information, give them something, maybe it's some sort of a takeaway. And now they have enough information. You've armed that brand ambassador with enough information where that consumer is like, wow, I had no idea about that particular brand. So I would say staffing is definitely one challenge. I would say another barrier, a lot of brands think of this experiential marketing by way of like, okay, we need to go out and produce something at the Super Bowl. And it's this exuberant price. And it's not. You can do this with really any size or any budget. There are events, there's programming, there's a lot of things. So anyone listening to this podcast right now, if you are a consumer packaged good, and whether you have been around for 100 years or you're actually starting to conceptualize your own brand, any brand out there can dip their toes in the water to see if this works for them. So I would say budget and talent are probably the two biggest challenges that we hear.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, yeah, what's the old joke? It's good help is hard to find, right?
Yeah.
So kind of pulling that budget thread a little bit more, if you could design a dream food and beverage activation with no budget limits, just something fun and exciting, what ideas would you like to try? There's got to be something out there you've always wanted to do.
Yeah, I would. I mean, flying someone to the moon would be kind of.
That'd be an expensive one. I don't know. Yeah.
For me, I would say that a lot of the programming that we do, it's very community based, and those are the programs that I truly love to do because that's where I see when the brands are out in the community. Sure. And they're having those conversations, and you're truly integrating your brand into the fabric of the community. That's where the results really start to happen. And for me, I live in a very results performance-based world. So a dream scenario for me, it's not super, exuberant. It's not this really, flashy thing. For me, the programs that I love and the activations that I love to produce are the ones that actually produce. And that's my report card because the brands come back and they're like, okay, Ray, we see this now. It's performance. We're seeing the results here. We're actually getting some brand lift here. How do we scale this thing? And that's what gets me really excited.
It makes a lot of sense. So I want to pull that thread a little bit more. Obviously, we're not going to the moon here, but like you were talking about the community engagement stuff. I'm sure you have some examples or some good stories of those being successful. I'd love to hear a story about that.
The brands that we work with in consumer packaged good, in food and wine, I would say the events really work well. And I think about an event where you're engaging someone when their barrier is completely down and you're able to have a conversation with them where they're just in a really good mood. and you have their attention. And I feel like with marketing, it's challenging. It's just there's a lot of noise out there,
Yeah.
and consumers have the attention span the size of a gnat. So I would tell you that any brand out there listening to this podcast, getting involved with events are outrageously successful and they're fun. Your team loves going to these events because the environment they're in. So a lot of the events that we've done, whether it's been craft beer festivals, it gives a lot of the brands that we work with an opportunity to go around and sample these brands. Sometimes brands are expensive. Like if you go into our local state store, you might be thinking about purchasing something, but maybe it's $20 or $30 and you're uncertain if you're going to actually like that product. So if you're actually going out and sampling your product, you're now like, oh my gosh, this is great, or this is fantastic. The way I looked at this brand is totally different. So I would tell you that. I would also tell you a lot of success has been with partnering with local retailers. And this could be by way of grocery. This could be by way of your local Ace Hardware. Like I look at these people, John, like they are the original, like the OG influencers. They've been in the community for 50 years. They support your kid's Little League team. They support the local VFW. So when your brand is connected to their brand, you're kind of tying into that goodwill. You're pulling out all that equity that they've created, which now uplifts and enhances your brand. So those are just a couple examples of like experiential marketing, how by just taking your brand and simply going out into the community, you get all this like softer marketing from it just by leveraging your brand with somebody else's audience, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a ton of sense. And I see it in grocery stores and hardware stores, everything else, where you'll see like the local high schools, football gear being sold at a thing, just as a quick example. But there's all sorts of stuff like that where you can connect with the local community, which of course, to your point, that's how you build those relationships. That makes a ton of sense. So obviously we're talking about the crowded field here a little bit. There's, obviously consumers, like you say, have a very short attention span. It's a very real thing. So how do you work with those brands in that very competitive space to keep that attention?
It's really about frequency. And it's just, we kind of we look at it as like, we have a really good strategy. We have a plan. We have a good team in place. And then it's really about frequency. And I make this joke all the time. It's not like Coca-Cola put up one ad and say, hey, our job here is done, right? But you don't need to have that sort of Coca-Cola type budget. So for me, how do you stay active and how do you kind of like continue to kind of elevate your brand? Clearly have to have a plan in place. You have to have a strategy in place. And then it really boils down to frequency. And I think the way that we've structured these activations, these community-based activations, I don't want to use the word cheap, but we've structured it in a way from an economic perspective. Sure. It's affordable. So you can continue to go out and have these activations. And I use the Super Bowl example. It's like, these are hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's just the economics of that just don't make sense. We can't continue to do that. But taking a more localized approach and really looking at the economics where there you can really scale and you can really keep your brand out in the market. And you're constantly reminding people about how amazing your products or services truly are.
No, that makes sense. The ROI and the affordability, that makes sense. Not everybody can afford a 30 spot at the Super Bowl. That's a big lift. That's a big lift.
It's kind of unrealistic. So to answer your question, to me, it's all about frequency. It's picking and choosing your spots. It's obviously test measure. To me, that's really, really important. I've kind of put this program together where there's a lot of guardrails where it's like, okay, we're not going to overinvest, but if we do see some results, and whether it's sales, whatever your KPIs are, impressions, engagement, I'm very sales focused. So for me, a lot of the KPIs I like to kind of wrap around the program as my report card. Is like, are we getting leads into your lead funnel? Are you creating this kind of drip campaign? And is this program actually performing for you? And if it is, for me personally, we're generally heading down the right path.
No, I think the old joke is like money talks. Yeah. I totally get it. So and I was just thinking this. Yeah, frequency over time, content over time equals trust. That makes sense. So
I tell people all the time, it's like, the things that we're doing, it's not like we're reinventing the wheel. We are introducing some technology, right? Like, people hear AI, very polarizing topic, right? So it's like, how do you balance the the old school methods of getting out there and face to face and having like real meaningful conversations, and then following up with like, okay, there are some tools out here that can help us as it relates to the follow up and making sure we're staying highly organized.
Yeah, the AI thing. Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's so much AI slop stuff out there on TikTok and Facebook Reels. It's just like, oh my goodness. And some of it is good, and some of it is just like, what am I watching here?
Yeah.
Who are you selling this to? What is the product? But anyway, I digress. But yeah, I'm curious to see where that goes in the future. Pros and cons. Anyway, back to the questions. So, what consumer trends are driving some of these very successful food and beverage activations right now?
I would say that there's definitely a shift in this where we're at. Again, we're kind of like boots on the ground. We're out in the field, and I would tell you that brands that have a sense of authenticity and they're real and we care and we care about you as the customer. We look at you as a consumer we want. So we're now in your play space because you and I have the same sort of values, right? So you can't, not to strike that, not that you can't accomplish that with a billboard or a TV ad or a radio spot. I'm not suggesting people should abandon those sort of that programming and that marketing. But what we're doing is we're actually going out there and showing the customer like, hey, we are one of the same. We value you. We truly want your business and we want to have a conversation with you. So I see that as a trend in the market with just, again, a lot of noise out there. It's a crazy world we live in. And if you can show the customer your sense of authenticity of who we are truly as a brand, this is what's important to us. This is what we're passionate about. To me, that's really important to consumers.
That cuts through it. It's that interpersonal relationship essentially. I mean, it gets into a parasocial relationship, I suppose, at a certain level. But yeah, no, that makes sense. You want to cut through the noise.
Yeah, you do. I mean, ultimately, people sometimes are going to make decisions on, hey, what's cheaper and stuff like that. So there's certain things like that that people will not, but certain people buy brands because that brand speaks to them for
Yeah.
whatever reason, whatever it is, their marketing, their communication, whatever it is that they're doing. You're buying that sneaker or you're doing something because there's some sort of an emotional connection there that's driving you to that brand. So we still see that, but we're definitely seeing it more from like an authenticity standpoint.
No, yeah, for sure. So obviously your events often, they obviously are connecting brands with consumers, where they are. But how do you measure those impacts? And we kind of talking about this a little bit, but I wanted to kind of drive in a little bit more on like what are those KPIs for you that really drive the impact in those environments?
For me, it's really sales. And then
Sales.
there's a softer side of it. It's like, hey, how's the engagement? What sort of like kind of insights are we getting? So when you're out producing these events, there's all these softer things that are happening. There's the team building. It's like, okay, you're getting your team out of the office, you're getting them out in the field. You as a manager are now having it's a different dialogue and you're now making meaningful connections with your own team. So there's a lot of different things that I kind of value from a KPI perspective. But again, I'm kind of laser focused on what's going on from an engagement perspective, how many samples have we been out, meaning how many touch points are there, what sort of other information can we gather, what is the competition doing, right? What sort of engagement as far as like how are we getting an email, are we getting a phone number, are we getting a sample? So for me, it's making sure you clearly identify what are those KPIs before we go out into the market. And I can help anyone that's kind of listening today. I'm like, okay, right. What is the blueprint? How exactly, what should they be measuring once they're actually out in the field? But ultimately, not to sound like a broken record, I'm most interested of like, okay, how are we giving your brand lift? And to me, if we're doing that, there's other things that we should be doing here. There's other things that are very, very important. But for me, it's all about brand lift.
No, I follow for sure. So you guys travel a lot for these campaigns, I imagine, all over the state and everywhere else, I would imagine. So what's the best snack you discovered out on the road doing these campaigns?
Best snack?
Yeah.
So in here locally, right? I love like what we do from like you take the Ready Terminal Market, and again,
Oh,
they're
one
not
of my
snacks.
favorites.
Yeah, so like locally, there's probably nothing better than like what's here. And for me, like I'm just a sucker for just something as simple as like a soft pretzel. Again, I'm not the most sophisticated guy that you'll probably interview, John, but like here locally, the things that we have here in Pennsylvania, to me, head and shoulders better than any else in the world, honestly. Like, I love our stadiums, I love our ball, and I'm talking both sides. I'm talking Pittsburgh, I'm talking
Oh, of course.
Philadelphia, the sports teams that represent the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's, as far as I'm concerned, there is no better place in the world than here in Pennsylvania.
I would agree with that. There's a lot of food options on top of it, for sure. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So, many PFMA members operate at both the local and regional level. So, how does Old City Media tailor these campaigns to work across both of those different scales?
Yeah, so our model really is crawl, walk, run.
Okay.
And for me, that's like we crawl, then we walk, then we run. And then in 2027, we're in a full blown sprint with who we're working with. So, a lot of times when we're going out and we're going to market, not everything that we touch turns to gold. There's certain locations it's not working. Maybe you're a brand and you're looking to reach a certain consumer. It's like, oh, we tried that. Maybe we should be over here. So the way I kind of structured it is like, let's minimize any sort of risk or exposure. Let's go out, test, measure, test, measure. Let's get a good enough sample size. And then once we know what's working, let's invest in that and then scale. And we can do that here in Pennsylvania, and obviously on a much larger scale nationwide. I mean, we have a strategic partnership with Walmart, right? So you're talking now, we can take a brand and literally go 0 to 60 overnight. But to answer your question more directly, I usually start very small. As a marketer, a lot of marketers would probably argue with that. Like, let's go big program, big package, lots of money. For me, it's like, no, let's start small.
Sure.
Let's grow. Let's figure out what's working, what's not working. And now once we've perfected that on a lot of different fronts, now we scale. And that's when the math starts getting really interesting. That's what starts getting me really interested.
No, that's really cool. And that's awesome. You have a partnership with Walmart. They're also a PFMA member.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're just great partners of ours.
That's amazing. So, a little bit of a lighthearted question here. So, if Old City Media had a mascot at your brand events, what do you think it would be?
So this is purely from a marketing perspective.
Sure.
It would have to be like an AI robot, because half the people would hate our event and the other half would love it. But to me, like, when something is kind of polarizing, everyone's talking about it.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go AI robot that no one's ever seen before, that freaks everyone out, that everyone's talking about. And the brands that we work with, they can leverage all that goodness and all that attention, and be a beneficiary of that. So I'm going to go AI robot.
I like it. It would definitely get engagement for sure. No, I dig it. So, yeah, so I just want to kind of ask about your experience a little bit. So, is there a partnership in the food and beverage space that's taught you something that you still use today, or something that really kind of expanded your toolbox?
I started in the hospitality space. I graduated from Temple, and we were producing a lot of events in bars and restaurants. I'm 21, 22 years old. So I was, that was the space.
I understand this. Yep.
Yes, that was the space. But that space, being in that environment, really taught me about hospitality and how to treat people and how to welcome people and how to really truly like roll out the red carpet for people and how to interact with people. And those sort of relationships and interactions that I learned by way of hospitality, of like actually welcoming somebody into your home, and how would you treat them if they're in your home? In my case, it was at my events. So at a very, very young age, when dealing with brands, beer, wine, liquor, consumer packaged goods, insurance, and telecom, all these different brands that I was having an interaction with, I think part of me, the way I started this agency, I had this hospitality in my DNA. And I feel like that sort of attention to detail, that white glove treatment, that world-class customer service. And I'm not saying it's lost today, speaking of AI and stuff like that, but it's something I find really, really important. And I still, to this day, I kind of practice those principles. So I would say, yeah, I would probably lean on hospitality, how I was raised by my parents, and how we treated people in that sort of environment. And I still kind of roll with it today.
I really like that. No, I can totally relate to that. When I was in college, I did some similar marketing work, so I completely understand where you're coming from on that.
Everyone out there that's probably listening to this has probably done some sort of marketing before. I think what we do that's slightly different is really taking your brand, and I mentioned it earlier in the video, is really truly integrated into the fabric of the community. And I think that's something that we do better than like literally any other agency kind of in the world. So no real stories that come out. I mean, I can tell you a million things of like what's going wrong and what happens behind the scenes and the things that most people don't even see that us as marketers kind of deal with on a daily basis. But that's what we kind of shield you from. You have agencies like us that kind of just are here to be like the ultimate problem solvers. But I would say that if anyone's really thinking about like, now I'm kind of intrigued here, I would love to have a conversation. I would love to speak to each and every one of your members pro bono, just to kind of understand what are your challenges, what are your objectives, and at least point you down the right path.
No, I love it. So, my last question as we're wrapping up here. So, as we look ahead, where do you see Old City Media growing or innovating in the next few years?
I would say we have two verticals here. I would say we'll continue to expand our retail partnerships with other grocery partners, both locally here in Pennsylvania and then on a national level. So I would say that would be the first step, is continue to source additional retail vendors. And then I would say the other part of our business, which is very synergistic, are other brands in different verticals, and not just consumer packaged goods. I would say even by way of like telecom. Like think about it. Like I probably have a gazillion different subscriptions to things, right? So there's other brands that are now reaching out to us that are saying, "Hey, can you help us with a subscription-based model?" Right? It's going there, and a lot of we all hate it, but it's coming, and it's like a lot of these brands are kind of seeing the value in this subscription-based model, whatever that model is. So I would say continue to grow our portfolio from a brand perspective, home improvement, telecom, consumer packaged goods, and then conversely, continue to grow our retail and grocery partners here in PA and then nationwide.
This was a really great conversation. A big thank you to Ray Sheehan from Old City Media for joining us today and sharing insights on experiential marketing, storytelling, and what it takes to connect with today's food and beverage customers. If you'd like to learn more about Old City Media and their work, visit oldcitymedia.com to explore their services and upcoming activations. Thanks for tuning into Shelf Confidence. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. Till next time, I'm John Zimmerman, and this is Shelf Confidence.